Hello, everybody. Welcome to Kevin Plays Disc Golf. Today we have a playthrough and course review from Hillsboro-Deering High School in Hillsborough, New Hampshire.
My name is Kevin, and I play disc golf.
Filming for this course playthrough was done on September 7th, 2024 and October 20th, 2024. This is a course that how exactly you get there is going to depend on exactly where you're coming from. That said, Google Maps for the Hillsboro-Deering High School and UDisc are both accurate to get you close, and it's pretty easy to get to from all directions. You'll very likely end up at the traffic light, note singular, in downtown Hillsborough, but you're equally likely to be coming from one of three directions. From this light, you're going to want to go north onto School Street. About a quarter mile from the light, you'll see the elementary school on your left. Immediately after you pass the elementary school, take a left. This is the access to the elementary, middle, and high schools. Be careful of the large speed bump just after turning onto this road. There are a couple of different parking options. UDisc has you park near the first tee, which leaves quite a long walk back from hole 9. I prefer to park in the middle school parking lot near the basket of hole 9 and walk to tee 1. If you want to do some field work, the soccer fields and baseball field near holes 8 and 9 are good options. There will be more detailed video shortly detailing both of these options. Finding the first tee can be a bit of a challenge if you don't know where to look, but hey, that's what these videos are for. A couple of things to note because there are some special considerations for this course. First of all, it is closed during school hours as it does on school property. Additionally, the course crosses the soccer, baseball, football, softball, and field hockey fields, so if any of those are in use, the round is likely to be interrupted. It's a good idea to check the school athletic schedule prior to going. I have played this course a few times, and the only issue that I have seen with course conditions is that after it rains, there tends to be a puddle that develops on the road just after the tee for hole 7 and at the base of the hill just before the basket of hole 8. There is really only one course configuration here, but a couple things to note. There are no tee signs or directions to the next tee from the basket, but UDisc is accurate for the placements of them. Finding the tee for hole 5 from the basket of 4 is the most challenging to figure out where exactly it is. I haven't taken measurements to verify the accuracy of the hole lengths, but they seem to be accurate. The tees are all gravel pads lined by wood, so they are at least obvious once you find them. Additionally, there is no alcohol or tobacco allowed on course as it is on school property. Trash is carry in, carry out, though at times I have seen trash cans around the course that are there for the various athletic events. Though there are no public bathrooms, like the trash cans, I have occasionally seen porta potties on the course for the other athletic events. Post in the comments where the porta potties and trash cans are in the round. Whether or not dogs are allowed is unclear. If you know for sure, post in the comments below. There is a dirt access road that goes around the fields that's popular for people to walk on. This path comes into play on all holes except for the first 2. There is plenty of visibility, so just be aware and don't throw until it is clear. I'll have my overall review of the course at the end of the video. Be sure to post your comments as to your thoughts of what looks fun and where you think the problem areas are. Now we'll take a look at the property itself just after we've gone past the elementary school on our left and we get to the intersection where we have the option of taking a left towards the middle school and the hole 9 parking area, or continuing straight ahead to the high school with the large red chair next to the high school straight in front of us.
Hello everybody, today is September 7th, 2024. We are checking out the 9-hole course at the Hillsboro-Deering High School. So as you're coming in from Google Maps is going to send you straight down to this road to a parking lot on the right that actually is fairly close to hole 1, which we'll get to later. However, I'm actually going to recommend parking by hole 9 just because I find it is a lot better to park to closer to the exit than the entrance, so that after you're done your round, you don't have a long slog back to the vehicle. So As you're approaching with the high school in front of you, you actually want to go to the middle school parking lot. So you're going to want to take this road to the left. And then the actual start of the first hole is going to be straight there. And there's going to be a parking lot on the right, which I'll give you a better view of shortly. Here we are a little closer to the school. That giant red chair really is that big. And yes, you can climb up on it. Kind of a neat place to get a picture here. So if you're following Google Maps, it's going to send you down this little road to the right, and the marker is going to be just behind that barn. So that is a large barn. The first hole is actually right on the other side of that second smaller barn. So we will get another view of that when we get to the first tee. As we're driving down the road to the left towards the middle school, if you look to your right, you will see the baseball field and all the fencing for that. And you can see where my creepy van is parked. Part of the reason for parking there is that if we go a little further, the basket for hole 9 is right around the corner there, up in the trees. I will point it out a little bit better in editing, but it is up there. So if you want to do some practice putting before your round, or if you want to go do some field work, there is the baseball field and 2 other soccer fields behind that. That's a good place to just go out there and warm up, throw things around if you'd like to do that. We'll get a better view of those later as holes 6, 7, 8, and 9 go across the soccer field and the baseball field. So here is the parking lot next to the big red barn that Google Maps directs you to. And if we swing around here a bit, there is the smaller red barn, the second one. And if we go back here, there's a lot of equipment here that changes locations. I've probably played this course about 10 times at this point previously. So a lot of this stuff has moved around, may or may not be here. But right over here we have the first tee pad, and we will talk about where to go from there. So with hole 1 starting next to the football field, it is a 231-foot par 3, at least according to UDisc. There are no tee signs here, but all of the tee pads are gravel and at least bordered with wood. One thing here that I ran into earlier this year is during the middle of the summer, with the football field being there, they had parts of that signs to not walk on it. So I would play that as out of bounds when that's the case. It comes into play a little bit here where you could go over where they had it marked out of bounds, and comes into play a little bit on hole 2, which I'll talk about when we get there. But this is a pretty straightaway shot. It's a little bit uphill at the end, but pretty clear to see where we are going from the tee pad. Well, my drive went into the brush, which is not uncommon here. The brush there is pretty thick, but as you can see just behind it, it opens up. I almost made it all the way through the brush. You'll see where I ended up, and we'll see if I can make a birdie from there. It'll be an outside shot just outside of circle 1, about 35 feet. Not quite, but I'll take it from the lie that I had. So moving from the basket of 1 to the basket of 2 with the tee behind us, we take a little turn to the left and we can actually see the tee box about 50 to 75 feet away, right from basket. Pretty easy to find this tee from the first basket. UDisc lists the second hole as a 363-foot par 3. Again, pretty open. Since the last time I played here about a week ago, that large light blue container has actually moved. It used to be much closer to where the basket is. The basket is tucked in the trees on the right. I'll point out exactly where the edge of it is, right near where that machinery is. That stuff has moved around quite a bit throughout the course of the summer. So exactly where that stuff ends up being may change. It actually made it a lot more difficult because you had a much narrower shot because you had to go around that container previously, where now it looks more open than it was previously. Well, got a good bounce from there, so we'll have a decent second shot. We're in the landing zone of the tee shot. We're a little bit closer to the hole that I normally end up being. I had a pretty strong throw for me. From here, if anything, it's better to be further left off the tee than right, so you have a straighter shot into the basket. Again, it was a bigger issue when that container was about 30 feet to the right of where it was and pretty much tucked right up against the basket there. But we have a pretty clear look at 2 here, which is about as good as you can hope for. So we'll see where we go from here. We'll take that. That's well within circle 1 and should be an easy 3 from there. Okay, so I'm noticing as we're up here now, the shrubbery has been cut back, as well as the container having been moved since the last time I played here. So I've got about a 18-20 foot shot for par 3 here, and we'll see how this goes. Just snuck it in there, so pretty happy with that, and we will move on. Moving from the basket of 2 to the tee of 3, we can follow the edge of the trees and bushes, and that will eventually take us there. So if we take a little walk around here, we do go into the ropes course a little bit, and third shot is kind of a nice little shot through the ropes course here. And we can come around here. And here is the tee pad for 3. Hole 3 is a 253 foot par 3, pretty much straight ahead. The basket is just in front of that large pine tree to the right. Since I was last here, the parking lot just behind the wall for the ropes course has been flattened and a couple of the large rocks removed. So it's a much straighter shot to get there now than it was previously. Or I could just go right over the wall and park it. It's the first time I've gone over the wall like that, and I believe I am very close to the pin there. All right, I have birdied this hole before. Let's see if I can do it again. Nope, but 3 will work. Not too bad playing par so far. So to get to hole 4, grab our disc out of the basket. And if we turn to our right, if you see the dirt pile, the tee is just to the right of the dirt pile across the road. So we can start walking up this direction. And here we have it right here. Here we're at the tee for hole 4. This is really the only one that goes way into the woods where you need to have a precise tee shot and a good second shot and hope you miss most of the trees. You just listed as 249 feet. It does play slightly downhill, but the idea is we need to go about 200 to 225 feet along this road, which the road curves to the left. You do have those trees that stick out on the left side, but you ideally do need to get a good 30, 40 feet past that. It's better to be a little bit longer here than short, and we'll show you exactly where to go from there. It's going to be short of where I would like to be, but we'll show you where we are from there. We ended up short here, just a little bit after where this crossroad goes up there, but the idea is you want to be another 40 or 50 feet further up the road, and the ideal landing zone is right in this area here, because if we take a 90-degree turn from here to the left, we can see the pin directly in front of us. It's not too far in, but you can see there's pretty dense woods on both sides of it. So it's going to be kind of a challenge. We'll see how exactly I play this, but my guess is I'm probably just going to try and lay up somewhere, hopefully get down close to the basket and have, if all goes well, a 20 to 30 foot putt. My second shot hit a tree, so I didn't make it into this gap, so I ended up with about a 15-foot putt for 4. So that's fine. I'll take my bogey here and move on. Moving from hole 4 to hole 5, it is definitely not obvious which direction to go here. So if we look back up at the road, that's the direction that ideally we would want to come down to complete hole 4. Can grab our disc out of the basket here, and if we take this little path to the left and follow this around, there's a rock wall over here. So we're going to follow this rock wall around and come back up to the road, go down a little bit farther here, and it is going to be here on the left. It's just behind the intersection of where you end up with this wide open gravel roadway parking lot area. All right, U-Disc lists hole 5 as a 295-foot par 3. It is a hard dogleg right. It goes around the corner. It's difficult to see from here, but about 20 feet after the road, past the road from this direction, there's a very steep drop off down to the soccer field. So the hole is not too far around the corner. So as long as you don't end up either down the ditch or in the woods on the right, it's a relatively easy second shot. And so that disc I skied and ended up in the woods, but there's a slight chance it may have popped out the other side. It's not too far in there, so I'll at least have something from there. In the landing zone for 4, this is at the edge of the gravel that you can see from the tee. We're looking back at the tee here. If we swing around, we can see just past where we are, it drops off very steeply. Going down the hill is going to make it very difficult to see where you're going, and with it being a good 15 vertical feet, tough to get back up without ending up putting yourself back in the woods. I ended up sort of behind that orange snowplow in the middle, way buried in, so from there I'm going to be lucky to get a 4. To get to the hole 6 tee, it's pretty easy to find. If we look to our left, sort of following the road, we can see the gravel tee pad right there, about 50 or 60 feet away from the hole 5 basket. All right, U-Disc lists hole 6 as a 372-foot par 3. The basket is just behind sort of that outer goal post. This is a total bomber hole. Nothing really comes into play except that area where the basket is gets used for occasional equipment storage. So there are times you may have to go around soccer nets or other various equipment, but this is one that especially for noodle arms like me, you can just let it fly. It is significantly downhill, so we're throwing down that slope that I mentioned on hole 5. And yeah, if you're gonna throw, see how far you can throw, this is the hole to do it on. Here's the basket for 6, looking back up at the tee. I had a chain out on my third shot from about 20 feet, so I ended up with a 4 here. From the basket of 6 to get to hole 7, if we, looking back at the tee, we can turn to our right. And if we look along these bushes here, take a little walk up here. This tee pad has had some growth in it, so it's not really gravel, but it's pretty clear that there is a wood rectangle that is where the intended tee box is. Hole 7 is a 279-foot par 3 going back across the soccer field. The pin is on a little upslope, so it's really hard to go too far here. Even if you could get over the top of the hill, there is a fence there for the softball field. There is a net to the right-hand side that I have been into a couple times if you end up tossing something far right of where you want to end up. But this is a pretty straightforward hole. Yeah, a little to the left of where I want it to be. From where I ended up, this gives a good view of how steep this side slope of the hill really is, but it's not all that far, so even if you roll to the bottom of it, as long as you don't roll too far, it's still going to be at most a 20-foot shot going back up the hill from there. And that will be a easy drop in 3 from there. After our toss in for 3 from about 15 feet, to get from the basket of hole 7 to the tee for hole 8, we can follow this fence up along this top of this little hill where it flattens out a little bit. Now the 8th tee is a little bit overgrown. Some of the gravel has had weeds come up through it, but the wooden outline is still pretty clear. And here we are for the tee pad for 8. Hole 8, U-Disc lists this at 303 feet, par 3, straight across here. This is probably my favorite hole on the course. Got an elevated tee so you can launch it across the soccer field, and then an elevated basket as well, so you have to have a precise second shot and maybe a challenging putt if you leave it short or end up getting it too far into the woods. I'll show you some of the woods up by the basket, but as long as you're within circle 1 when you're in the woods, it's not too bad. It does thin out a little bit behind there. Well, I ended up a little bit left of where it's ideal, but again, this hole is not really about the tee shot unless you get it really close. It's about having a good second shot. Here we are in the woods behind hole 8. My second shot ended up about 10 feet past the basket in the woods, which, although it looks like there's a lot of stuff in the way, there are some gaps here where we can see the basket. One thing to note here is, however, going back towards the basket, this is a death putt, as after the basket, this is basically 8 feet nearly straight down. So you're gonna end up a long ways away if you miss. All right, I hit a tree on my third shot, ended up with a 4. So just to show you where we are going, because it is a fairly long journey from here to the hole 9 tee. We do have to go down this slope, so again, be careful. And then we're going to follow the road to the right, and I will pick it up a little bit further down, but it's going to be before we get to the little gully. I don't know if you can see that before the red barn. All right, a good marker here is that if we are walking down this road and we are directly perpendicular with the soccer net and the baseline there, we go a little bit further forward and start walking from there to the red barn, we will see our tee pad for hole 9. U-Disc lists hole 9 as a 422-foot par 3, and I will probably rant about this more in the little wrap-up section for this course. But the basket is on the hill. It's pretty much straight away, but your two options are to either go over the baseball field. There's a little bit of danger there. So these nets close to us, they are flat on top. So I don't know what happens if it gets stuck up there. Thankfully, I haven't had that happen yet. The other option is to go around, following the road to the right, and that loops back around. But the other issue is that the fence on the far side, the main fence behind the backstop, is probably 25 feet tall, and even the lower fence is about 10 feet tall. So you have to be able to clear that and get it above. Realistically, I think this should be a par 4, not a par 3. Whether or not you mark the baseball field out of bounds and force people around, or in either case, you should think of this as happy to take a 4 on a par 3 hole. All right, gonna try something a little bit different to see if I can maybe try my overstable disc and go around the lower part of the fence. I'm at the right distance to be able to do that, and then have it hook in at the end. Well, I went over the low part of the fence. Here I am looking back at the tee after my second shot, following the road around to get to here. And you can see the green is kind of a difficult one here. I've got, a long circle 2 putt here. The issue here is, again, it's kind of a death putt that right around the green is pretty steeply uphill. So if you miss left, you're rolling back and looking at another outside of circle 1 or maybe even a circle 2 putt to get back up to the basket. All right, so here we are at the basket of 9 with the woods behind us. We have the tee for 9 in the barn over in that direction. Way off in the distance up there, you can see the goalposts and the upper parking lot, which if you started parking close to hole 1, you are going to be up there. And if you decided to park next to the basket to end the course, you are going to be right out here in this parking lot.
There were some minor course changes between the first day of filming on September 9th, 2024 and October 20th, 2024. These changes affected holes 2 and 3. With the construction that is happening, it is possible that these 2 holes will be affected more, but for now the changes made the holes slightly less difficult and easier to navigate. The thumbnail hole and my favorite hole are both hole 8 for this course. I use this as the thumbnail not just for this course, but also for my very first video. The basket placement is unique, and though the tee shot lets you throw max distance, it does require some control to be in position to still be able to see the basket with your second shot. My least favorite hole is hole 9, a 420-foot par 3 across a baseball field with 15-foot high fences on either end makes this seem like it should be a par 4. Though there are a couple of options here, my preferred suggestion would be to move the tee pad 100 feet or so forward in front of the long jump sand pit, move it closer to the road, and make the baseball field OB. Alternatively, the tee could be moved back, make the baseball field out of bounds, and call it a par 4. A third option would be to move the tee pad left to take the barn and batting practice netting out of play so that the hole is a bit shorter and there's only one fence to clear. The pin location is creative and a good one, but getting there, not so much. The first and last holes are critical for introducing the course and leaving the last impression at the end of the round. Hole 1 does a good job of what to expect. An open hole, lots of room, but don't go in the woods on the right. Many of the holes play this way. It is shorter than most of the others, though it is uphill. Hole 9, on the other hand, kind of makes me not want to play this course anymore. It's awkward, and there are more artificial hazards that come into play on this hole than there are on the rest of the course combined. Hoping for a double bogey on the last hole will never leave a good impression. The first time I played this course, I did have a few navigation issues. Finding the tee for hole 1, finding where the basket for hole 4 was, finding where the tee for hole 5 is, initially playing from the tee of hole 5 to the basket of hole 6, and convincing myself that the hole 9 tee really was that far from the basket of hole 8 were all issues. Navigating this course was much like finding small islands on the open ocean. If you trust the navigation, you'll get there, but you might get stuck on a reef or two along the way. This course is relatively safe for discs. The biggest concerns are all going into the woods on the right on holes 1, 5, and 9. But in all three places, it is much more likely that you'll find your disc after looking for it in the woods for a minute or two than you are to lose it. Hole 4 is a bit awkward, but the trees are open enough that as long as you don't go too far in early on the left, it'll be okay and you'll have no problem finding your discs. The hole 9 tee shot is the only hole that the thought of losing a disc really comes into mind, either with a terrible throw that gets stuck on top of the baseball batting practice net or going into the woods on the right if I play the baseball field as out of bounds. Though the gravel tee pads are not great, they're at least consistent on all of the holes. The biggest issue I have with the tee pads is that the brush tends to get bad enough in the summer that it goes over or into the tee pads on holes 5 and 6 and affects the tee shot as a result. As a right-hand forehand player, my arm swing would hit the bushes on both holes if I was to throw how I ideally would like to. This is a bit more critical on hole 6, where more distance off the tee is very helpful. The Innovo baskets are all of excellent quality, and the red banding makes them easier to spot in the green fields than the video might imply. My overall course rating of how far would I drive to get there for the Hillsborough-Deering High School disc golf course is 30 minutes if you've never played it before, or 20 minutes to play again. With the majority of the holes being open, this is definitely a novelty in the world of New Hampshire disc golf. Only hole 4 and maybe hole 3 could be argued that they are typical New England woods disc golf holes. Having better maintained tee pads and maybe some signage would help significantly. The 20-minute drive to play again is a bit inflated, as there's a 9-hole course at New England College that is a much more typical New England's woods disc golf experience, about a 15-minute drive away. I'd recommend playing these two courses in the same trip if you want to get another course in, but want to see how different the characteristics of two courses can be. Much like Shanghai and Buenos Aires, these two are polar opposites. The only other course that's within a 40-minute drive is the pay-to-play Northwind Disc Golf course in Hopkinton, New Hampshire, and even that's about 25 minutes away. I will likely play the Hillsborough-Deering High School course again, as I live in this region of New Hampshire where there isn't much in the way of course options. It is a good place to go for fieldwork though, so there's definitely some value there, and realistically, except for hole 9 and the awkward hole 4, the rest of the course provides more options on how to play the course than you might expect for an open course. Throw in that it's relatively safe for discs, and though it's not the best course out there, the novelty of it being open makes it not the worst either. If you need another excuse to come out this way, the Pierce Homestead is a New Hampshire State Historic Site and was the childhood home of Franklin Pierce, the 14th President of the United States, who was the only president from New Hampshire. There is a small fee to take a 1-hour tour, and you will need to book in advance, especially on weekends, but it is a worthwhile experience and a good look into what it was like to live here in the early 1800s, as well as get a look into how the state and national government were run at that time. It's only about a 4-mile drive from the disc golf course. Make sure to leave a comment about what courses you would like to see next. Like, subscribe, and be like Sonny Bono's second wife and share.